Good morning, everybody. Warm welcome to all of you, and welcome to everybody joining us virtually today through Facebook and YouTube. It is great to be with you this Sunday morning. So I got a question for you. Let's see how well you know your faith. What is a saint? If you had to define the term saint, what definition would you give? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Yes, in the back, if I can hear you. Yes? What do you say? That's true. Someone who protects us from the demons of hell. Out of the mouths of babes, such profound things come. Very good. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Yes? Someone canonized. That's a big word for kids. What does that mean?
Well, it means that the church has recognized someone.
So to be a saint, you have to be canonized. Is that true?
I believe.
Not quite. Yes? Very good. So a saint, there's two definitions of a saint. There's a long one and there's a short one. What you just said, Mom, was the short one, and I didn't tell her the answer ahead of time. The long definition of a saint is a friend of God who lived a life of heroic virtue, who is dead and in heaven. Now, I don't expect you to remember the long definition of a saint, but if anybody wants to try one more time, a saint is a friend of God who lived a life of heroic virtue, who is now dead and in heaven. The short definition of a saint is simply anyone who's in heaven. And your definition, young man, was not incorrect, because the saints in heaven do indeed protect us from up there, even from the demons. A saint is anyone who's in heaven. Now, I want to point something out to you. Just think about this for a second. There are about 10,000 canonized saints in the Catholic Church. At the same time, they tell us that in the course of history, there have been 100 billion people who have lived and died up to this point. So does that mean that out of the 100 billion people who have lived and died up until this point, only 10,000 of them are in heaven? Yes or no? No, of course. Nobody knows but God exactly how many people are in heaven, but it's got to be, for sure, way more than 10,000 people. All of those people who are in heaven, above and beyond the 10,000 canonized saints, are themselves saints, simply by virtue of the fact that they're in heaven, because anybody who is dead and in heaven is a saint. Now, you know that saints have feast days, right? If you come to Mass during the week, usually the priest is going to say, "Welcome to Mass, today is the feast day of so-and-so." And with 10,000 saints to celebrate, and only 365 days of the year, most of the days of the year are going to be taken up with the feast day of a certain saint. Not all, but practically all of them. March 17th, for example, is the feast day of whom? St. Patrick. And for all of you Italians out there, March 19th is the feast day of whom? St. Joseph. October 4th? St. Francis of Assisi. Very good. These are the saints who have feast days to celebrate their lives. When, however, do we get to celebrate the feast day of all the other saints who are in heaven and are true, legit saints, but who are not yet canonized by the Catholic Church? Today, exactly. Today is All Saints' Day. And today is the day we celebrate the feast day of all the saints of heaven who are not canonized, but who are saints all the same. I like to call this your grandmother's feast day. And I say that loosely speaking, but I say your grandmother's feast day. What do I mean by that? You know, your typical Catholic grandmother. Maybe not everybody had one, but your typical Catholic grandmother. She was a devout Catholic. She went to Mass every Sunday. She said the rosary every day. Over the course of her life, she changed 20,000 diapers. She did 30,000 loads of laundry. She cooked 50,000 meals for her family. She spent her whole life forgetting about herself and living for her family and other people, and then she died in the state of grace. Now, is the Catholic Church ever going to open up her cause for canonization and canonize her? Probably not. Is she going to be remembered by anybody outside of her circle of family and friends 2 generations after she died? Probably not. Is she going to go down in history and become famous someday? Probably not. But is she a saint? Absolutely. Because she lived a life of heroic virtue and she is dead and in heaven. Therefore, she's a saint. And today is her day. You know, they say that there are 2 types of saints. There are saints with an uppercase S and saints with a lowercase s. The saints with the uppercase S are the heavy hitters. The St. Josephs, the Mother Teresas, the Padre Pios. The saints with the lowercase s are all those good and humble people who lived good, unassuming Christian lives and who died and went to heaven. Those are the saints with the lowercase s, and there's far more of those than there are saints with an uppercase s. In our first reading today, St. John has a vision of heaven, and he says, "I saw a great multitude, which no one could count, from every nation, race, people, and tongue. They stood before the throne and before the Lamb, wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands." That great multitude is the communion of saints in heaven that he saw. Both the saints with an uppercase S and the saints with a lowercase s. And today is their day. Now, here's a point that I want you all to meditate on this week. One of the most incredible things about being Catholic is that you do not have to wait to die and go to heaven before you are reunited with your loved ones who died and went to heaven before you. All right, let that sink in for a second. You don't have to die and go to heaven, if you're Catholic, before you're reunited with that great multitude of saints, among whom are many of your own loved ones who have gone to heaven. And why is that? It's because there is one place on earth where we are united with all the people who have died and gone to heaven like no other place, and that is at Mass. At every single Mass, all the angels and the saints of heaven are present. When we sing, "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God of hosts," all of the angels and saints of heaven, all of them come down from heaven. They fill this entire sanctuary and they fill this entire church, and they remain with us until the end of Mass, adoring the very Eucharist that comes from the bread that the priest consecrates at this Mass. At every Mass, heaven meets earth like in no other moment in your life. Let me tell you a quick little story. I have a good friend who's a priest named Father Mike. And Father Mike was very close to his mom. They were best friends. 5 years ago, his mom died at the age of 93, and my friend Father Mike was just devastated. Now, Father Mike has a good friend named Shane, and Shane is confined to a wheelchair. And because he's in a wheelchair, he has a hard time sometimes getting out and going to Mass. So Father Mike, every so often, will go to Shane's apartment and say Mass for Shane right there in his living room. Well, shortly after Father Mike's mom died, he went to Shane's apartment and he said Mass for Shane right in Shane's living room. When they said, "Holy, holy, holy Lord God of hosts" together, Father Mike distinctly felt the presence of his mother right by his side. He said it was so clear it was as if his mother were physically standing there next to him. And she remained there for the rest of the Mass. She was almost tangible. When the Mass was over, they took a moment of silence to pray. And then Shane turned to Father Mike and he said, "Father Mike, I got to tell you something, but don't call me crazy." Father Mike said, "What is it?" And Shane said, "Father Mike, your mom was here at Mass today. I could feel her presence at the holy, holy, holy." Was Shane crazy? Was Father Mike crazy? No, they were Catholic, and they still are. They were experiencing the communion of saints that happens at every single Mass. Just a week and a half ago, I did a funeral of a 65-year-old man named Nick. Left behind his wife, 3 kids and 4 grandkids. At the end of the funeral, I went up to his wife to console her, and she said to me, "Father, Nick was here today." Now, I thought, for sure he was here. His body is in this casket right in front of us. It didn't say that, but that's what I thought. And she said, "Father, I could feel Nick here in the communion of saints." Now, that's how a Catholic thinks, and that's how a Catholic talks. He was there at the communion of saints. Let me give you just one more example. Every year, my family has a family reunion in the summertime. We rent a pavilion at a park, and usually we do what most families do at family reunions. We cook a lot of food, we eat a lot of food, and we catch up with each other. Well, because we have a priest in the family, and because our family reunions are always held on Sundays, we do one other thing that most families don't do at their family reunions. We start with Mass. I always celebrate Mass for my family before we do anything else. Well, I can distinctly remember the first family reunion we had after my mother's mother died. And I can distinctly remember that while I was saying Mass in this pavilion, it suddenly dawned on me that my grandmother was not absent from that family reunion. And suddenly it dawned on me that in that moment I was at the ultimate family reunion. I had all of my earthly family members still alive around me, and I had all of my heavenly family members who are dead around me too. It was the family reunion of all family reunions. Whether you have Mass in a great cathedral, the living room of somebody's apartment, or a pavilion at a park, at every single Mass, all of the saints of heaven are literally here. You know, it's a great thing to visit somebody's grave, and we Catholics have a lot of respect for people's mortal remains and cemeteries. But even visiting somebody's grave is not the closest you can ever get to somebody you love who has died. The closest you can ever get to somebody you love who has died is to go to Mass. They are really and truly present here. You know, there's a lot of beautiful old paintings that depict this reality. I don't know if you've ever seen an old painting or an old holy card with a priest dressed in old vestments, and above him there's a cloud. And above the cloud there are men and women of all walks of life, of all vocations, in the thousands. That cloud represents the communion of saints, what St. Paul calls the great cloud of witnesses present at every Mass. And just recently, a really cool video came out. It was called The Veil Removed. I don't know if any of you saw this video. It's only 5 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. And in this video, they try to show you what's really happening at Mass. So you see a normal Catholic Mass just like we're at right now, but then in the video, suddenly you see the things that you can't see with your eyes at Mass. You see the angels around the priest. At one point, the priest turns into Jesus. And then at one point, you see Jesus hanging from the cross and blood dripping down from his body as the priest holds up the chalice, and the blood drops off of Jesus' body right into the chalice, which holds the wine that we believe really becomes Jesus' blood. Well, at 4 minutes and 40 seconds in that video, the camera zooms away and you see a breathtaking image. You see the priest surrounded by angels, with a cloud above him, with saints all on the cloud and more angels reaching up to heaven. I'm going to post that video later this morning on Facebook for anybody who wants to watch it. Press pause at 4 minutes and 40 seconds. It goes quick. But if you can see that image, you have, in one single picture, the reality that we're celebrating today and the reality that you experience at every single Mass you attend. I'm sure all of us here today have someone or multiple people whom we love, who have already died, who we miss very much, and who are already in heaven. Today is their feast day. Not only do we remember them and honor them today, but in just a couple of minutes, we are literally going to welcome them into our church. How awesome is that? As we prepare to welcome all the canonized saints of heaven, let us say to them, Happy Feast of All Saints' Day. Today is your day.